Welcome. Hello. It's good to have you with us. If you're joining me on Instagram, it's good to have you there, and on Facebook in our Dynamic Iridology Assessment System group. Hello. And if you're with me live on the webinar, welcome. It is good to have you here. Thank you for making this a priority for the next about 45 minutes to learn a little bit more about iridology. I'm going to start with a brief introduction while we're waiting for people to hop on with us. My name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and an IFA certified level 3 instructor. Level 3 is a level they just introduced this past summer, and to the best of my knowledge, there are only 3 certified level 3 instructors in the world to date. I have been in the holistic health industry for over 4 decades. And in those many years, I have written several books and self-published and self-distributed. So they're not available on Amazon, and they're all out of print right now. They're waiting to be redone because they're all very old. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and Level 2, and the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology textbook, which is the only new one on the lot, and that is the textbook that we use in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I've also created and taught many courses, a Herbology Level 1 course, which was 20 hours of training, teaching people how to use herbs in their home, particularly herbs that they've purchased that were already prepared, so encapsulated or tinctured, where they purchased them through a herbal company or at a health food store, and just helping them to understand how to use these. They loved that course so much, and we taught that 3 to 4 times a year for many years, with full rosters of students and often wait lists. And they loved it so much that they asked for a level 2, which we produced, which was how to understand herbal combinations. So if you were in a health food store or purchasing your products from a herbal company and you saw a formulation, how would you know what it was to be used for beyond what the company had said it was good for? And that was very popular as well. I've also designed and taught biokinesiology and color therapy level 1 and 2. For a few years, I was a certified prenatal educator with the ICEA, and so designed and taught prenatal classes. That was a ton of fun. And most recently, in the past 5 years, I've become a certified iridology instructor with IPA, the International Iridology Practitioners Association. With my nutrition credentials, I am a proud member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and the Canadian Association of Natural Nutritional Practitioners. And with my herbal credentials, I am also a proud member of the Alberta Herbalist Association. Now, as we are rocking and rolling with this today, I just want to make sure that you know that this is an interactive little workshop. If you've got questions about what we're talking about, please send them in. Drop them in the comments or the chat, and we'll do our very best to make sure they get answered for you. As we're talking about fiber structure today, it's important for us to recognize and to review a little bit of iris anatomy. This is a cross section of the iris, of one side of the iris. So the pupil is sitting right here. So the pupil is immediately to the right of this diagram. Then we have the pigment rough or the pupillary border. And then this is the bulk of the iris. And then over to the left-hand side of this would be where the sclera attaches. And so as we look at this, the topmost layer is the anterior border layer. And this is where the pigment is held. The bottommost layer, which faces into your eyeball, is the posterior epithelium. Between the anterior border layer and the posterior epithelium, we have layers of fibers, which are actually capillaries that are coated in collagen. And it's these capillaries that we are going to be looking at today. It's this fiber structure. These individual fibers are often called trabeculae. As we look at, for example, a very dark brown eye, a true hematogenic eye, there is a lot of pigment in this anterior border layer, and it hides virtually all of the fiber structure, or all of the fiber structure. Technically it does. And so when we are looking at a true hematogenic iris, we're not going to see fiber structure the way we will in a lymphatic eye or in many biliary eyes. We can get a feel for some of what's going on in that fiber if we see radial furrows. So for example, in this eye, we've got this radial furrow. So we know that we've got a separation fibers here, we've got a separation fibers here, we've got a separation fibers here, right? And so while we can't see the fiber structure in the body of the iris or in most of the iris, we get a feel for what some of it is doing, looking for separations. Now let's contrast that quickly with this hematogenic iris. Can you see that we have a different fiber structure here? Here we have many lacunae. And so depending on the structural subtype of the iris, we may see more of the structure, even in a hematogenic eye. Now, the particular thing we are looking for today, that we're talking about today, we are not going to see in a hematogenic eye because of the amount of pigmentation. Let's contrast this to a true lymphatic iris. Can you see that here on the medial aspect of this iris, we have a fiber that is running across other fibers? Can you see this one as well? So most of these fibers radiate outwards. Occasionally we'll see a fiber that's skittering across. If you can see this, give me a number 1 in the comments box so that I know you can see this fiber that I'm pointing to. And Sarah is saying 1. Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. I'd love to hear from more of you as well, if you can see this, just because if you can't see it, then I need to find a way to make it more clear for you. Okay, so it's important to me that you see what we're talking about here. When we have a fiber like this, this is called a transversal. When fibers are radiating outwards, we often call them radials, or we'll just call them Trabeculae, which is a catch-all name for all of the fibers. But when we've got a fiber that is skittering off sideways, this is called a transversal. Transversals are important because they teach us that when we look at that organ reaction field, so whatever organ we know sits in this area, it teaches us that there is more of a predisposition towards inflammation and pain, and maybe even the formation of scar tissue. Here is another eye. Depending on your schooling, you might want to call this a biliary eye, or you might call it a lymphatic eye. It truly does depend a lot on how your screen, your monitor is displaying color. I've got 4 different computer screens, and of course a phone and a tablet, and every one of them displays color differently. So because I see a fair amount of bluishness in here, I will call this a lymphatic iris. Now, for those of you who are with me on Instagram, I apologize. This image is not showing up well for you, I don't think. That is just the nature of the beast, and for that, I'm truly sorry. When we look at this eye, and we're looking for fiber structure again, notice that most of the fibers are radiating outwards very, very nicely. So this is what we ideally like to see. These are not fibers. These are wrinkles in the eyeball. Right? So this is not what we're looking at today. We are actually looking for fibers that are going off across other fibers. Now, this young man doesn't have many that are going off. And this is a really important point to make here. And that is the fact that the fiber structure is inherently determined. It is determined by your genes. It's not determined by what you ate. It's not determined by the supplements you take. It is genetically determined at the moment of conception. Okay, so we're not going to move fibers around, and this is super important. These are set the way they are set, and we work with the way they are. Now, in this eye, there really are not very many fibers that are doing unusual things. We're going to come back to one in just a moment. But there's not very many. Most of these fibers are what I would call nicely organized. When we come over here, this is a left eye. So this is the lateral side of the left eye. When we come right into a very, very fine bit of fiber in here that was doing something weird. Let me just move my camera back a tad. There it is. Okay. Right in here, we have one little fiber that's doing something bizarre. Can you see that one? If you can see that one, give me a 2. One little fiber going off doing its own thing. Now, normally with iridology, the fewer there are of a marking, the more important it is. The smaller it is, the more important it is. And the darker it is, the more important it is. Okay, so when we're talking about fibers, thank you, Sarah, for letting me know you could see this. When we're talking about fibers, we're not looking for dark fibers, right? But we are looking for, are they small and are they going off in a weird direction? Now, this is a general rule. It's not a blanket truth. It's a general rule. So the fact that this young man, he was 12 years old when we took these pictures, has this one fiber doing this weird thing over here means this is really important. Okay, so this is a left eye. This is coming down through his lung, and it's the lung in the core blood and lymph area, right? So that's not to say that I'm going to, focus on this and put a ton of fear into this young man. I am simply going to be aware that he could run into some lung issues at some point in time. At the time of these photos and for the following 4 years, he's now 16, 17, not a spot of lung problems at all. Extremely physically active, has amazing lung capacity, strong, bright young man. Knowing his family history, that his great-grandfather passed away with tons of clots in his lungs, right, and congestive heart failure. And knowing that his great-grandfather on the other side also passed away of congestive heart failure, but also knowing that neither of his grandfathers has this problem, nor does his father. This may not be anything to be concerned about. It's just something we are paying attention to. It's something, again, that I would note in my client notes, but I would not necessarily alert the client to this. There's other things that we can work on here, that are less scary and that would have a more direct, immediate impact, and that might even impact how this marking over here functions over time. Right, so with a teenager, I'm with no personal history, no history in his immediate family. I'm not going to focus on this. I just wanted you to see how fine that fiber can be. Here again, we have another beautiful lymphatic iris. Notice the strong central heterochromia and the scurf rim. We also have contraction furrows. I want you to also pay attention to the fiber structure here. I like to start at the top at 12 o'clock and do a sweep coming around the eye, looking for things that might not be quite what I want them to be when I'm looking for fiber. And what I find is that things are looking pretty good until we get down to about the 7 o'clock marking on the clock. And here we have a couple of fibers that are diving off across things. Now, when we're looking at this, this is a right iris. And if you've been with me for a length of time, you'll know how to determine that it's a right iris, even if you don't have notes, if you don't have that notation in front of you, or you don't know what order you took your photos in, for instance, this is definitely a right iris. And so as we look at this area around 7 o'clock is the ovary testy area. So we would need to know the gender of the person to know if that is what we want to be concerned about, right? And then from there, we would then want to be asking questions. So you never look at an eye and say, oh, you've got a marking here, blah, 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 and start spouting off about it. You always want to find out, what is your client's concern? Why are they seeking your help? And if anyone says, I just want you to read my eyes, I won't. Right? I won't, because I need a context. Iridology is not a crystal ball. It's not a party game. It's an assessment tool. And so I need to have a context with which to assess their eye. And then that'll help me to know how to interpret things. And so if this was, say, a female coming in saying she was having some really wicked menstrual issues, that her PMS was horrible, that she had a lot of pain at ovulation, then looking at her eye, I can see the predisposition to pain and inflammation in her body. That's just part of her constitution. But then when I do that fiber sweep where I'm going all the way around and looking to see what I see, and I land here at 7 o'clock and I see these fibers running across other fibers and going right through the ovary region, then I know that I'm going to ask her specifically questions about her ovary. And in this case, it's her right ovary, right? And I'm going to focus laser in on that, find out as much as I can about her symptoms, about what she does that helps, what doesn't help, how long has this been going on for, before I start putting together recommendations. I'm also going to want to know what her diet and her lifestyle are. I'm going to ask her, I'm going to tease her probably and say that I'm going to know more about her than her mother does by the time we're done, right? And I'm not really teasing because I need to know that much. And so when we see this fiber running across here, again, it says predisposition to inflammation and pain, possibly scar tissue. And, if she's got ovarian symptoms, then it makes complete and total sense. Is this making sense? If this is making sense to you, give me a big thumbs up somewhere. Emmy, good to see you. Thanks for joining us on Instagram. It's fun when my students join me. Emmy is a student. Sarah with us on the webinar is a student as well. So this is fun. Here we have 2 eyes from one person. We've got the left eye and the right eye. And again, what we want to do is start at the top and do a sweep. And I'm getting lots of, yes, it makes sense. Fabulous. I love that. We're going to do a sweep coming around here. Oh, and hearts. Oh, I do like the hearts. Do the sweep coming around. Are we seeing anything for fibers that are a little weird? Oh, we've got some over here that are doing some going across. We've got another one up here. This is a contraction furrow. This is not a fiber. So we've got a few in her right iris. In her left iris, again, if we do that sweep, coming around, we've got a fiber here. Now notice this is where we're layering up symptoms and markings, right? We've got a transversal that is also in a scirphrym. So if you remember what your scirphrym means, now we've got this transversal. This is in the right lung area. This is going to give us information. If she's come in asking for help with anything that we can tie back to lungs, maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's breathlessness, maybe there's a history of lung problems like pneumonia or bronchitis or asthma. This gives us information as to what's going on. Look very carefully right here. See this one here? This is a heart-spleen transversal. It connects the heart zone to the spleen zone. And this increases, tells us that she has an increased cardiac risk. Okay, so this client was in her mid-50s. Good health. She's a nutritionist. She actually has a very clean diet. And so as we look and see this, the question isn't necessarily, do you have a heart problem? It's, is there a family history of anything heart-related? Right. And I actually don't like to ask that right off the bat anyways. One of my first questions to my clients is always, is there a personal or family history of anything? Is there anything running in the family? Right? Because if I ask that as a general question before I've looked at their eyes, there's no fear. They know I'm just looking for information. If I've looked at their eyes and I'm now saying, is there a personal or family history of anything heart related? It's going to engender a little bit of fear because they're thinking, what does she see? What does it mean? What can I do about it? Right. So we want to be very careful how we use this. So when we see this heart spleen line, and we know that means an increased risk of cardio issues, then we are going to, if cardio fits into what our client is wanting help with in this appointment, we are going to find a way to work this in very, very gently. We'll talk about diet. We'll talk about the fact that you haven't had any symptoms to date. That's brilliant. You're in your mid-50s. You and I all know people have had heart attacks in their 30s and 40s nowadays, right? And so you haven't had any symptoms. This is fabulous. That means that the changes that we are going to make will not move this line, but they will improve your ability to resist having a cardiac incident. Does that make sense? So when we see something like this in someone who has no symptoms, we can always address it as being a preventive thing, that the changes we want to make are about prevention. We want to empower our clients. Now let's keep coming around because she's got more of them. She's got one right here. She's got another one right here. And these, again, all need to be considered based on the organ reaction field in which they are sitting. They will not all be equally important. And I would never take 10 minutes and go, well, you've got this one here, and this one here, and this one here, and this one here, and this one here. That's called overload, right? We never want to overload our clients because then they don't take any action at all. So here, because these are in the lower body, yes, they do correlate to specific organs, but I'm also wondering, because she's a lymphatic eye type and because she's very over acid, I'm wondering if she at 55 has any symptoms of arthritis. I'm going to find a way to ask her that without, again, instilling fear, because this, again, can be organ specific or it can be system oriented. And my feeling is with that many of them, it's probably more systemic and it's probably more an arthritis predisposition, which actually she did say she was starting to have a bit of arthritis. She is an organist as well as a nutritionist, and she plays the organ professionally for a couple of different churches. And she was starting to say that, yeah, her hands could get kind of achy and have some problems if she was preparing for a concert or a big event at the church. All right, so that means that we could focus on diet and supplements that would help to reduce inflammation overall. Are we good? If this is good, I want to see a good. Excuse me, in the comments box. Give me a good in the comments box if this is making sense. And Sarah's saying good. Excellent. All right. Here again, we've got a set of two eyes. Lymphatic. Lymphatic are just for this kind of marking, they are the easiest to read. Biliary are a little bit tougher, and that's why we're focusing primarily on the lymphatics today, is because as we're introducing this concept, we want to make sure that it's really easy for you to see. So here we have a right eye. This is a female, again, in her mid-60s. And when she came to me, thank you for letting me know that this is good, De Roche's J, that's great. When she came to me, her complaint was respiratory. And we're going to see some things here that give us information about that. So we're going to start, she's lymphatic, she's over acid, she's hydrogenoid, she's slightly uric acid. So we've got all kinds of things here that are adding up to help us understand her lung situation. Now, those are her constitutions and her subtypes. Her diet is quite good, but she really likes her cheese, right? So this could be a bit of a concern for what we're working on with lung issues. So we're going to do that sweep. We're going to come all the way around. We're looking for the fibers today. That's what we're focusing on. And we're looking for fibers that are skittering across other fibers like this one here. Right? We're coming up. Oh, here's another one. Oh, this one is in a lung area. We've got a few other markings that say lung here as well. So we've got one here. This suggests inflammation, pain, risk of scar tissue. Let's come to her left eye. As we do the sweep around, again, we come down to the lung area and we've got this heart spleen, right? So we know we've got, and look at how this one kind of goes through the heart zone and into the lung zone before it actually comes down to the spleen zone. So we know here we've got several things that again point to the lung area as being a possible issue, particularly with her symptoms, correct? And so when we look at this, we want to look at diet, right? We want to get rid of that cheese. We want her to be doing more with drinking good water. She doesn't drink coffee or tea. She doesn't drink alcohol. She's got a pretty clean diet. She does like sweets now and then. So for a while, we want to take that away or substitute healthier versions of them. And we also want to consider that lungs have to have an emotional base. And so we need to examine that perspective as well, because she's got, according to her eyes, she has the physical predisposition to have a problem. If she has an emotional, if she's had a trauma of some sort that would create the emotional stress for her lungs, that can also trigger a lung issue. So it's not just as simple as one marking equals one symptom. We always need to be tying back, what is the diet? What are the emotions? What's been going on? Because she's a whole person. We need to address things holistically. All right, is this good? If this is making sense, I want to see a makes sense in the comments box. So this is, oh, Sarah, I love that you're playing with me in the sandbox today. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. And love it that, you know, Oxford and so many others have been commenting on the various platforms. Truly appreciate that. Thank you so much. So when we look at fibers, that is just one way that we want to consider fibers when we are doing an iris assessment. Just one way, one tiny way, just a taste. We actually spend an entire lesson learning about fibers that are not radiating outwards in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course, which, by the way, is starting again in just about 3.5 weeks. So the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for holistic practitioners is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. This is really important. So many of us spend way too much time creating programs for our clients. And when we spend that much time, we're putting so much information in that we are overwhelming our clients. By learning how to integrate constitutional iridology that I teach under the banner of dynamic iridology, learning how to integrate that into your client sessions, you will be able to begin creating your client programs in your client sessions while you are with your client. When you create your programs that quickly and that cleanly, it means that your client will not be overwhelmed. It means that your client will more likely be successful and get the results you are looking for. It means that you'll be breaking their programs down into step-by-step processes, and each appointment you will add another step or two to the process. Yeah, makes it so much easier for them to accomplish things and to be successful because they understand each step they are doing along the way. This is one of my students, Sky Fibke. She's a herbalist. She actually took the course in a unique way. She registered for it, but because she works about 7 other jobs, she's a very busy girl, she was unable to attend any of our classes live. She listens to the class recordings and accesses all of the pre-recorded material and all of the print material that I have available in the course. As she says, I could not have asked for a better layout for learning. I was unable to make it to the scheduled classes, but the recordings of the classes were amazing. I loved the weekly quizzes. I'm glad to know that I always have you and my iridology community to turn to if anything ever comes up where I may be challenged. That's an important point, that there is ongoing support in the structure of my dynamic iridology program, even after you have finished the program. I certainly look forward to being able to use iridology to help people take the steps to a healthier lifestyle. Thank you for being a part of my journey and for all the support provided. You did not miss one detail. Thank you so much, Sky. Again, the course is starting up on April 21st, and if you would like more information, I'm inviting you to join me for a webinar on April 4th at 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And if you would like the link to that webinar, drop a comment in the chat box. Let me know that you would like to attend this information session so that I can send you the link. Okay, this is just a session for you to learn what's included, what is the curriculum, what are the payment plans, what kind of support is there. This is just to give you the information you need so you can decide if this is a good thing for you. If you've actually maybe attended one of these before, or maybe you've been with me for a while and you've attended many of these free webinars already and you're thinking, I'm interested, I encourage you to schedule a call with me. For those, and it'll be a Zoom call. So for those of you who are interested, the URL for this, grab a pencil quickly, is tinyurl, tinyurl.com/iridology-call. I'm just going to make sure, for some reason that doesn't feel right. Let me just make sure it is right. I would hate to send you on a wild goose chase. Let me just make sure this one is working. Yeah, this one works perfect. So iridology-call, tinyurl.com, iridology-com. Oxford Herbal, absolutely. And LeBlanche, absolutely. I am going to make a physical note of your Instagram information, and I will reach out to you there. Thank you so much. And again, anyone else on any of the platforms, if you need the link, let me know. Again, it is tinyurl.com/iridology-call. So just before we wrap up, I want to show you something else here. We talk about the eyes being inherent. Let's look at 3 generations of one family. This is the mom. Can you see that she's got a lot of fibers that are skittering off in unusual ways? She's got this really big one right here. There's another one here. Another one in the lower part of her eye here. Oh, she's got one right up here at about 12 o'clock. Right, she's got another little one right here at about, what is that, about 1 o'clock. She's got a lot of these fibers. She's got one that splits off here and another one here. So she's got a lot of these fibers. Notice this is her right eye. This is her sun. Notice the similarities. We've got a big one right here coming off very similar areas to where his mom has them. Now, this fellow married this woman. And notice she doesn't have as many of these. She's got a much cleaner structure to her eye, right? So she's got a little bit, you know, we've got one up here. She doesn't have any of the great big huge ones. And then as we look at daughter, this is the granddaughter. Notice that the granddaughter has one right in here, which again, this is all right eye. So she's got one in a similar area to what her daddy has and to what her grandma has. So we've got the 3 generations here. All righty. I just find it's interesting when I can do a 3-generation study to see how things get passed down. So interesting for sure. All righty. So again, just a reminder of the course info that we're doing an info session on Monday, and I will send that link to anyone who has requested it. So LaBlanche and Oxford, I will send you the link so that you can join us for this. And if anybody else would like that link, please make sure you reach out to me. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you found that interesting. If you have an iridology background already, I hope you found it helpful. And I hope it gives you a little bit of an insight into the depth that iridology is. That iridology is not a 1 marking equals 1 problem correlation. We always want to have 2 or 3 markings pointing to one area. We want to understand each of those markings to understand what information they give us, and most importantly, to understand what questions they want us to ask the owner. Right? That is holism. Holism is about involving the client, and it's about addressing the client as a whole integrated being, physically, emotionally, spiritually, every way possible. Excellent. And so LaBlanche and Oxford, you are so welcome. I'm so glad you were with me. Thank you for being with me on the webinar, Sarah and Maria. And for those of you who have joined us on Facebook, so good to have you with us today. I look forward to seeing you again next week. If you are not receiving the weekly invitations by email for these Thursday webinars, again, reach out to me. Send me your email address, and I will add you to the email database so that you will receive a personal invitation each week to join us for the different topics that we do. I look forward to seeing you again next week and hopefully talking to you very soon. I hope you have a fabulous day. Bye for now.